Hi guys, just before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to ask you a big favor. Assuming you like the content that I'm putting out on this channel, could you please do me a favor and press the subscribe button? It really does help reach more people. And while you're at it, if you could just smash that like button down there, we'd really appreciate it. I just want to get this channel out to as many people as possible, so more and more people are getting exposed to these kinds of stories. And I'll stop talking now and let you get into the episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have on the show Prosper. So just before we get into the questioning, I was actually referred to Prosper's story by one of our listeners who's actually referred me a number of people. And Prosper's story was, as soon as she started telling me about it, I was immediately right, give me his details. I need to speak to this guy. And, you know, we started WhatsApping and immediately jumped on a call. I mean, I say immediately, probably the day after we jumped on a call. And these calls normally last about, 5-10 minutes. I think we were probably on the phone for at least 30-35 minutes because he was touching upon a number of areas in which I'm really interested in and I think are really key to recovery. So, Prosper actually was dealing with a lot of chronic issues for the majority of his life. And it was only towards, fairly relatively recently in comparison to the rest of his life that he found out that one of his major issues was mold, and that actually he was incredibly sensitive to mold and couldn't really be in a moldy environment without reacting terribly. And it was through, his own research and determination that he was able to work more on his mindset and actually got himself into a position where he used psilocybin mushrooms, which for me is just fascinating after what I've been, gone through this year. To actually really help rewire his brain and retrain his brain and his fight or flight system to not react to these kind of things. And he's actually got a Facebook group called the Limbic System Lounge. I told him before the episode that I thought it sounded like quite like a cool bar that you could go to. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. Thanks so much, Prosper, for coming on. And you're in Costa Rica right now?
Yeah, Phil, I am in Monteverde, Costa Rica.
Nice.
Up in the cloud forest, actually. So basically I live in a rainforest and it's magical.
Wow. So someone who previously had issues with mold, and you're living in a very humid, hot, moist place, I imagine.
Yes, so it's actually where I originally, and when we get into my story, I'll explain all of this, but when I first lived in Costa Rica, I lived right near the beach, and it was, so about 31, 32 degrees, 93, 94 Fahrenheit every day, 85% humidity, combined with substandard developing world building practices. And it makes sense now why things unfolded. But then once I had healed myself, I was actually able to move back to that same beach town in Costa Rica. Wow. and do really well there. But here in Monteverde, sorry to interrupt you, it's cold. So I don't know the elevation, but it's chilly. So it's nice. There's definitely still those environmental factors here, but not nearly as much as at the beach towns.
Cool. Well, so let's take it back to like well before I understand you kind of lived with underlying issues for quite a long time. Could you tell us a little bit about that, like your childhood and leading up to the point where you first started getting stuff like seriously wrong with yourself?
Yeah, 100%. So now that I'm where I am, I'm able to look back on my entire life and just understand so much, because ever since I could remember as a little kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, I was very serious, very introverted, had or experienced depression, what I recognize that as now. And then mental illness always runs in my family. And I was just told that everything from, I've been diagnosed as bipolar and that I had depression. and was always just told, sorry, kid, it's your brain chemistry. It runs in the family. Have a pill. And I had never taken many pills, a few times, and they either made me either a lot more depressed or just completely unable to feel anything, unable to cry, unable to do anything. And from an early age, about 15, I had always self-medicated using cannabis, which can be a powerful medicine. Looking back on my behavior, I definitely abused it. But I realize now that so the terpenes that are in cannabis, which are the essential oils that give it its distinctive aroma and flavor, are actually antifungal. And so my theory, I don't know how I would test this scientifically, but is that, you know, I felt better when I used cannabis because it was dampening the molds that was in my body. So basically, yeah, I mean, to try and make this short, I'm a smart guy. I come from a good family. We weren't wealthy by any means, but I went to good schools, and, you know, my parents always supported me and encouraged me. Never had any major traumas or familiar discord or anything like that. But I also, and I say this with all the love for myself in the world, I'm not beating this up in the world, I was a total loser. I jumped from job to job. I was addicted to cannabis. I wasn't a heavy drinker, but, you know, I used alcohol to self-medicate in an unhealthy way. Had a lot of what I like to call self-protective behavior that most people call self-sabotage. And basically sitting there on the couch by myself in my room, you know, eating popcorn and first reading books, and then as the internet came of age, watching Hulu and then Netflix, not creating, not sharing anything with the world, not doing anything with my life, because my limbic system, which I hope we'll get into, I realize now the mold had rewired, had crosswired, caused a dysfunction in my limbic system that made me, my entire life, from a mild to sometimes extreme state, be in a state of fight or flight, where it was like, I thought I was running from a tiger. And when you are running from a tiger, like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, it's not a time to create. It's not a time to share. It's a time to fucking run. And in our modern context, you know, I was hiding myself away. So that's why I was a loser. That's why, you know, I had never made more than $20,000 a year. Because I was just in this chronic loop of limbic system trauma, where I couldn't get out of until I realized what was happening and was able to take steps to fix.
Can I just ask you a little bit about that? So, because for people listening who, I get completely what you mean about fight or flight. I never used to really, but like, I guess years ago, but now, because of my nervous system, I actually feel like the smallest sound makes when it's quiet, makes my whole body just jump. Like I can be in bed, and even just like my girlfriend making the smallest sound, my whole nervous system just jumps, and it almost like get like a brain zap to my head. And I know people experience it in different ways, but like for me, I know that's my whole nervous system is completely on edge, and it's just there, like ready to go. What was it like for you, and what kind of symptoms did you get from that?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. So I thought I found the solution years ago when I found out something about HSP. It's called highly sensitive people. And there's whole books and programs about it. And I grew up in a very spiritual family. I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is like a spiritual mecca. And it was okay to be a sensitive person. It was okay to you know, be in touch with my feminine part. And like I cry very easily if I got emotional, and that was okay. So I thought that I was just sensitive. But yeah, looking back on it now, I realized that so the symptoms I used to experience were mostly mental health, depression, anxiety, and absolutely bipolar behavior. Sometimes, man, I would be on top of the world. And I look at that, I was always very passionate about, outdoor activities, and always felt great doing them. And now I realize that's because I was outside. I was away from mold. But then when I was down, man, I was down, a lot of suicidal thoughts, the self-protective behavior, isolating myself, hiding myself away, just doing the same things over and over because your limbic system wants to keep you safe. It's been developed, evolved, over at least 300,000 years or so of us being anatomically modern humans to do one thing and one thing only, and that's keep you alive. And it's done that so far. It's done a great job of that so far. But it doesn't know that I look at it kind of like a big roided out meathead. And don't get me wrong, there are bodybuilders who are, chemists and doctors and brilliant, but just the stereotypical, meathead who's ignorant. It's literally in the dark. It does not have a moral compass. The limbic system does not know that sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, feeling sorry for yourself is bad, and exercising and eating the right things is good. All it knows is I've been on the couch eating Cheetos for 20 years and I'm still alive. This is good. Oh my God, healthy food, new behavior, any new behavior, it's going to push away with everything it can. And that's why we have procrastination. That's why it can be so hard to say, I know I need to be taking these behaviors to heal. Why am I not taking them? So I hope that answers your question. I mean, I could sit here and just go off on the limbic system all on.
No, so that's good. So did you start to get physical symptoms? Because I know obviously the mental side of it, quite often can actually be a lot worse than the physical stuff. And I guess it depends what you're going through at the time, but when did you start to feel physical things from it? And because I guess when it's mental, you just assume that, there's something mentally wrong with me. It can't be anything to do with my environment. And then when the physical stuff starts happening, then that's when you're like, something's not quite right here. What can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I'll start with the story of my dog and kind of the moments she has Lyme disease. And the moments that I figured out and realized that there was something that was wrong with me. And then I'll kind of work backwards from there a little bit. So appreciate everybody's patience with that. So my wonderful dog, Shayla, has Lyme disease. She got it when we're living and working on a farm in Wisconsin, which is absolutely endemic, like in that area. Not everybody, but so many people have Lyme there. It's really sad. And I was living in Costa Rica, but I thought I was doing well. But I had met a friend of a friend who told me about somebody who had healed themselves from Lyme disease and loved helping people with that. And I wanted to talk to her about if there was something I could do for my dog. So pretty quickly in the conversation, she's like, well, your dog has Lyme disease and a lot of people whose pets have Lyme have it. How come you don't know? Or how do you know you don't have it? And I was like, well, I thought about it, but I've been tested in the past and it came back negative. And I mean, I do yoga every day. I work out. I'm in the best shape of my life. I meditate every day and I'm happy and I'm healthy. But now that you come to mention it, if I miss one meditation, if I miss a day of yoga, if I have one beer, I'm hungover the whole next day. If I do not take like perfect self-care of myself, it's just sliding back into this horrible, horrible depression very quickly. And I did grow up in Connecticut, 40 miles from Lyme, Connecticut, playing in the woods. I've always been an outdoorsy person, and my dog has Lyme. And come to mention it, my joints are sore, and I can't seem to go to bed, stay awake past 8 o'clock at night. And I'm tired all the time. Oh, fuck, I have Lyme disease.
So I should.
And it was then. So then, to back up, so my entire life, I had been depressed and anxious, but I just thought it ran in the family. That was my brain chemistry. That was my lot. Now I realized that I was also experiencing chronic fatigue and something called EDS, where your joints and your muscles are very tight. Like, for example, and I played basketball in high school, which I loved and taught me a lot. But, as a 16-year-old boy, I would have to take a nap between class and basketball practice, or I was just wrecked. And when I was playing, somebody would barely touch me and I'd get injured. I always had these nagging injuries. And I believe that was from the EDS. Later on in my life, for some reason, I sought out these difficult jobs. I was a cook, farmer, a rancher, construction, and I would always be very excited about these things going into them. And then I'd start working at it for a couple of weeks and very quickly be like, oh man, I'm tired. My body hurts. I don't want to be a cook anymore. I don't want to be a farmer anymore. But I would just kept going because I'd feel like, well, I can't just quit another job. I can't just transition into another career. I'm already a loser. I need to stick with this. And then eventually would just burn out on it and just be wrecked. So once I realized that I thought I had Lyme disease, well, I'd always just gutted through all those things and the chronic fatigue and everything, because I had always felt that way and I never knew any better. I just thought that's how everybody felt. And it's kind of like, hey man, oh, you're tired and you're depressed and your body's sore. Yeah. Welcome to the United States in, the 20th and 21st century. Have another cup of coffee and suck it up, buttercup. We got an economy to build, right? And then once I realized that Lyme could be a possibility, it was like, starts getting into the mental picture. It was like all of a sudden, just all my energy, all my will to suck it up and have another cup of coffee and keep going was just gone. And I was just like, remember spending days in bed going, I have Lyme disease. I'm in a foreign country. They don't know anything about Lyme disease in Costa Rica. It's so misunderstood in the UK and in the United States as it is here. It's just like, what is that? So, I was just drained from there. And that's when I moved back to the States and figured out it was actually mold and started moving forward. But I hope that gives you guys a picture of kind of what I experienced in my life up to that point.
So out of interest, how old were you when you moved back to the States?
Yeah, well, that was recent. So that was about 3 years ago now. Okay. So I was 38.
Okay. And up until that point, so how did you first start? Like, how did you come across like the idea of mold? Like, how did that come into? And were you tested for mold? Did that ever how did you do that?
Yeah. So I want to back up again a little bit to my whole life. I had experienced these things, the depression and the fatigue, and just had no idea. And just that's the way I am. I moved to Costa Rica after a life breakdown. Basically, I listened to so much country music, my life became a country song. Within a few weeks, literally my truck and my camper got repossessed. My girlfriend left me. I had to sell my livestock to buy groceries. And it was just like, I give up. I quit. I'm moving to Costa Rica. And I remember the first day I woke up, could barely get out of bed, so stiff. And it was just like, what the hell? But well, I'm getting older. I just had this complete life meltdown. My identity as a farmer is gone. What do I do now? Move to an extremely different climate. I don't know the language, etc. It's just stress. And went into this horrible depression where worse than ever before. My suicidal thoughts went to suicidal ideation, just extremely low energy. It was awful. And I realized now that it was because of mold. I just had moved from a place that was a little bit moldy to a place that was super moldy. So then I'm sorry, could you guide me in your question again from there?
So, no. I think it's important that I think because you went ahead a little bit, we understand, I think we've missed the part of the story where you went from the States to Costa Rica. or Costa Rica, as you guys like to call it. And yeah, so it was mold, and that's when you first started to get the symptoms of mold. And then you must have got yourself to a place through meditation, yoga, diet, to a place where you actually you thought you felt good. That's when you had the issue, where you had the conversation around your dog, you had the realization around Lyme, and then you got back to the state.
Yes.
And then, see, I'm a good listener. I take all this in. And then this is when I wanted to understand, like, because you said you found out it was mold. How, obviously, you'd was it a case of you were speaking to someone, they mentioned mold, and it was just like, you know, the light bulb went off and you realized, or did someone mention it and you were like, that sounds like it makes sense, I should get tested for that, and got tested? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, thank you for being an amazing podcast host. So I'd like to say there was that light bulb moment, but it really wasn't. It was just, I was sure that Lyme was what was going on.
Yeah.
Because I'm an outdoorsy person. My dog has Lyme. I grew up playing in the woods 40 miles from Lyme, Connecticut, where the disease first originated and was discovered. It was just such a clean fit. There was no doubt in my head. But then, as so many people do, as then they dive down the rabbit hole of, okay, well, what do I do now? I found this connection between mold and Lyme, and vice versa, where it's mysterious, it's misunderstood, as you know, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, the Lyme or the mold. But I was like, oh, okay, well, mold, that's a thing. But the fit was so clean with Lyme for me that I didn't really, I kept leaning in that direction. And it still didn't dawn on me like, oh yeah, I live in a super hot and moldy environment. I was so focused on Lyme, and went back to the States, was very lucky to right away, I think even before going back, I had lined up an appointment with a great naturopathic nurse, just really close to my hometown. And after hearing my story and speaking for 20 minutes with me, she said, okay, well, we're going to test for Lyme and we're going to test for mold, and, you know, we'll do these things. But I really think that mold is your issue. And regardless, if you do have Lyme, we need to deal with the mold first, and then we can treat the Lyme. And so, she had told me about DNRS, the Limbic System Retraining Program, but she also didn't emphasize its importance at that point. I wish she would have. What she really wanted me to do is just get out of the mold. And so what I did was I went into van life. Such a crazy story. I was basically forced into it. I had come back from the States and was renting a little pop-up A-frame trailer from some friends who have like a bunch of trailers on an Airbnb property in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it was moldy for sure. And, you know, once she had told me about mold, then I started seeing it everywhere. And I knew that the air conditioner was moldy, but then it's summer in New Mexico, and it's like, and I was experiencing heat intolerance. So it's like, well, you know, I'm fucked already. I might as well just have this moldy air conditioner blowing on me so that at least I can feel decent for 20 minutes, you know? But I had to be out of there. Once I really my mycotoxin test came back. I did like that. She was like, yep, you got these mycotoxins. We're going to have you take these binders because they match with that. And you need to find a new place to live. And I had like a week to be out of this little trailer. And I looked at apartments, houses, even stuff way out of my price range. I had started looking at some vans and campers, but they're all moldy and funky and gross. And it was, I think, 3 or 4 days before I had to be out of this A-frame. I finally found this van that was just stripped out. It was an old government van, and it was a crazy process. I even remediated it further from there. But one of the worst days of my life, man, when I took out the carpet in the front. It had like rubber, it was rubber with some foam insulation underneath. And I knew mold was my issue, but I had no idea anything else about mold. So I was just in shirt and just wearing my shorts, no mask, no shirts, no gloves, because it was so hot. It was August in New Mexico at 7,000 feet, blazing sun. And I rip out this carpet and then immediately like just want to die, just want to kill myself. But I knew it's not me, it's the mold. Just come on, just get this van cleaned out. But I tell you what, man, that was like one of the worst days of my life, experientially wise. Because at the end of it, I was walking barefoot down the road, this country dirt road in New Mexico, walking my dog, just like sitting down every 20 yards because I didn't have the energy, and just crying, just weeping. I was so depressed. But at that point, I thank God, I knew it wasn't me. I knew that it was the mold. I knew it was inflammation in my brain that were causing these cascading chain reactions, and was able to get through it because of that. So I moved in the van, and it was incredible. Within 5 or 6 days, the brain fog lifted. My energy started to return. I wasn't depressed anymore. I could feel the inflammation in my body go away. I had for a long time had this clicking in my elbow where that went away. And I just know now it was because of inflammation in my joints. So pretty quickly saw that, yeah, it was mold, and there was confirmation. And that was great. But then I would feel great for 4 or 5 days out in the woods by myself with my dog, walking around barefoot in the sunshine. And then I would get lonely and need to do the laundry and get groceries. So I'd go into town and I would go into the laundromat. Within seconds, the first thing that would happen is tingles up and down my arms and on my back. Then like my kind of shoulders would slump, just energy, just drained. Then my knees would start to hurt. And then the coup de grace was a very dark voice would pop up in my head saying, "You suck. Your life isn't worth living. You should kill yourself." So it was a horrible experience. But again, I knew that wasn't me. I knew it was the mold speaking. And I knew I was in a laundromat where there was probably burst pipes, and I could see the water damage. Also a ton of chemicals in there from the laundry detergent and dryer sheets and all that stuff. So I would go out, do my chores, go back out to the woods, and the next day wake up and be back to feeling good. And it went on and on like that until I finally got to a point where I was able to start DNRS. I didn't start it sooner because of something called limbic system resistance, like we talked about earlier. Any new behavior, your limbic system wants to push away because it's unfamiliar and might be unsafe. And then I also just had some logistical issues with, I didn't have solar panels on the van at that point. It was a DVD program or online, but I was in the middle of nowhere usually. I couldn't do it online. I didn't have a DVD player. Finally, I figured it out, was able to get a DVD player, start the program, and really quickly felt a lot better. And within a couple months, was able to start working a little bit again, started pursuing some of my passions, going in buildings, being around people, which as it turns out, Phil, a lot of cool shit happens in buildings and around people. And I appreciate that now more than ever, because after I ended up living avoidance, basically, of mold and chemicals for about 1.5 years. And it works. I felt better, but it's not sustainable. That's no way to live your life. And
can I just interject? Just for those who are listening and haven't heard of DNRS, it's DNRS, right? Is that?
Yes, sir.
And so that's like brain retraining. And I've mentioned the Gupta program before, which I've actually tried to do, didn't take too well to it. And it's kind of but it's in the same world as, brain, Gupta program, Joe Dispenza, and a lot of it is trying to change toxic thought patterns, right? Is that right? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, and thanks for keeping me on point. I'd say that changing the toxic thought patterns is more of like a downstream effect. At its heart, what these programs are doing is activating your body's internal healing mechanisms and helping through resetting your limbic system to its factory setting.
Okay.
So to speak. So there's parts of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming in there. There's parts work in there so that you're dealing with your trauma. There is meditation and breathing exercises and holistic health exercises such as grounding, proper diet, getting the right amount of sun exposure and things like that, all of which are epigenetic triggers. When we go out in the sun, it turns on and off genes that can hurt and harm us. When we ground ourselves, reconnecting. This all sounds like a bunch of hippie BS, but what's cool now is that science is behind it. I mean, with grounding, our bodies are electrical bodies. Our brains operate on electricity, as do our heart. And to complete a circuit, it needs to be grounded. So by getting out barefoot on the earth, you are reconnecting your electrical circuits. It's also causing epigenetic triggers to happen in a positive way. Also, cold exposure and different breathing exercises like the Wim Hof method. So I was sort of also intermittent fasting can be an epigenetic trigger as well. So there's lots of little different things, but at their heart, these programs are about helping to reset your brain and body to its factory setting. Oh, this is such a great segue. Because I really see, Phil, these conditions that we're experiencing as a blessing, as we're like canaries in the coal mine, as not that we need more of those at a time when the world is so crazy and we're destroying our environment and there's so much pollution, but our bodies think we're still living in the jungles, forests, and savannas of 50,000 years ago. But every day, our bodies are exposed to thousands of chemicals that did not exist even 50 years ago. We're sitting in chairs, doing this on the computer instead of sitting on the ground and hunting and gathering. We are socially isolated instead of living in tribes. We're falling asleep to the screen instead of the fire. So if you're experiencing a chronic health condition, I want you to know that you didn't do anything wrong and there's nothing wrong with you. You came out perfect. You are just a human animal living in an environment that it is nowhere near adapted to.
All of those points really resonated with me, and it's difficult to get to that way of thinking when you're brought up in a completely different way. And I love the fact that you were talking about the factory reset button. I feel like if I could push that right now, I really would like to. So could you take us on to the bit of this, because I know so you were doing the DNRS, you started to integrate more into society again, things were looking good. Could you take us through the next part of the story?
Yeah, 100%. Things were going good for the most part. I would be in the laundromats, and I was still living in my van. I started doing stand-up comedy and acting classes in Las Vegas and be going in these dingy little dive bars at night doing open mics, which were definitely contaminated and still feeling good. But then sometimes I'd go into those bars and have a reaction, and it just wasn't consistent. COVID also, full disclosure, I was not as consistent with the DNRS as I could have been, for sure. It was limbic system resistance, it was new behavior, so it was being pushed away. And I think that contributed to the inconsistency in my life experience. Along the way, then COVID happened. No more comedy, no more acting, no more anything. Suddenly became where I had already been isolated in van life because I was scared to be around people and buildings. Now you had COVID, and it was a bad time to be a stranger in a van rolling from town to town. And I got super isolated. I just wanted to move back to my little beach town in Costa Rica where I had friends and could walk barefoot on the beach and not have all this political media craziness that there is in the States. But I knew that town was super moldy. and I had to really step up my game or figure something else out if I was going to be able to move there and continue to be healthy. So around that time, I was listening to a podcast or something and heard the story of Paul Stamets, who is pretty much the world's leading mushroom expert right now, both psychedelic mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms. And he has a wonderful company that makes amazing products. But he has a story of where he healed himself from a lifetime of stuttering when he was a freshman in college from one intense mushroom experience. And that I had heard it before, but it landed with me then. Basically, he had taken a lot of mushrooms, found himself in the top of a tree, a lightning storm rolled in. He's in the big oak tree on the top of a hill. He's like, I'm going to freaking die. If I don't, I got to get my shit together with this stuttering thing, or I'm never going to make anything of myself. So he's sitting there for 6 hours hugging this tree going, stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now, stop stuttering now. Probably hundreds, maybe thousands of times. He came down from the tree and he realized the next day that he was healed. A pretty girl said hi to him. In the past, he would have not even looked at her, just ignored her because he was so afraid of the stutter. And without thinking, he went, hi. And then he talked to more people and realized it was gone. And then he came to find that in stutterers, the stutterers don't have, there's a major neural branch that does not form in the womb for stutterers like it does for the rest of us. And his theory was that he took like 15, 20 grams of mushrooms.
What?
Yeah. And was at the top of the tree in the lightning storm. So he had this super intense experience, but he was also using these affirmations, directing the medicine where to go. And that landed with me like it hadn't before. And I was like, I can mimic that. I'm not going to take 15 grams and I'm not going to climb a tree, but I'll take 5 or 6 grams and I'll sit in my van and go, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. Because by then I understood that really the heart of conditions that are caused by a dysfunctional limbic system is a lack of feeling safe, that you think you are being chased by a tiger. So at its heart is safety. So yeah, I did that. I took 6 grams of mushrooms, sat in the van, and for 6 hours said, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe here, I am safe there, I am safe everywhere. And I like to say the next day it was like this golden god, and I felt pretty much the same the next day, but I tested it more. I kept going into laundromats. I went to dive bars. I went to places and it was like, okay, I think we're good to go, and booked my ticket for Costa Rica. I put my van in storage just in case. So I had that escape hatch in case I got there and was like, oh no, okay, need more mushrooms, need more DNRS. But I got there and felt fantastic. And it really seems that the mushrooms had done a trick. Which is actually one of the reasons I am doing the interview here in this room. For people who are watching on YouTube, you have a YouTube channel you post this to, right? So there are mushrooms. And I didn't even realize that until yesterday when I was looking for the place to do this interview. I wanted to do it somewhere outside in the jungle, very Pura Vida, but it could rain here at any minute. So I found this and I was like, that's perfect with my story.
So with the mushroom, did you literally just had that one big trip, and that was the kind of, that was what you needed, that you didn't need to do another one of those?
So yes and no. I started out by microdosing. Now I had done mushrooms as a kid, more as a party kind of a thing. I had also done them a few times throughout my 20s and early 30s, a little more medicinally, but not like with a ceremony, and certainly not, with the intention. I didn't know that they could cause neurogenesis, all that stuff. It was more of a spiritual thing. But so I did have experience with them. And so I felt comfortable to take 6 grams and I knew I was going to be okay. And I also, I have a close friend who's a psychedelic therapist. So I consulted with him, which made me feel comfortable enough to do that. But yeah, I started with microdosing, which anybody who's interested in using mushrooms and hasn't before, I would definitely recommend starting there. And I look at it as kind of like warming up when you go to the gym. You don't just sit there and put heavy weights on the squats. You warm up first. So with microdosing, you can kind of limber up your brain first, make sure you agree with the medicine, that you guys play well together. Because, hey, look, mushrooms are great medicine for me. I think that they can be for a lot of people, but maybe not everybody. So it's important to go slowly, to not, especially if it's chronic conditions have to do with the nervous system so often. So you don't just want to jolt your nervous system. You want to move slowly, move easily, be gentle.
And so I'm really interested in this particular subject because I have microdosed and I have and actually when I came back from ayahuasca, I did a few grams, and I was just expecting, to be honest, I was just doing it at that point. I was just doing it recreationally. I was just like, oh, I'm going to be. There was some sport on the TV, so I was like, I'm gonna just have a couple of grams because I don't drink at the moment, and because I don't really do anything else. I was told after ayahuasca the only thing I really could do was mushrooms, so I was like, I'm just gonna do this. And then I was on the phone to my friend, and then suddenly, and I'm going a bit off topic here, but it's an interesting story. I realized, like, when I was on the phone to him, I was like, oh my god, this is kicking in like a lot more than I was expecting. I need to get off the phone. I messaged my girlfriend and said, do not come home in the next few hours because I'm about to trip out. And I went and lay on my bed, and it was like I was in another ayahuasca ceremony. And thankfully, because I'd done ayahuasca, I would just let go. And I was just like, this is what it is. I can't do anything about it. And I had the most amazing trip and had all these visions and all these realizations, and it was amazing. But I feel like if I'd done what you were talking about and was just like, just focusing on the affirmation that you were talking about, it would feel a little bit like I was trying to control it, because with what I was going through, it was like I kind of had to just go on its journey. Like I was going in and out of these various things. Were you not, I mean, with 6 grams, were you not like having loads of visuals and loads of like, did it not feel like you were not completely with it?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm so glad you brought that up about you knew to lean into it or to let go.
Yeah.
That's so important when you're using plant medicines, to let go, to not have attachment. And I'm still figuring that out. I talked about that in my Facebook group on the live video I do for a few minutes every morning, Monday through Friday, about how I've been maybe engaging in some toxic positivity, and just because I'm big on affirmations and mindset and all that. And it's absolutely true that you need to do that, but you also need to deal with the root trauma. You need to get the nail out of your foot before you put on the Band-Aid, that kind of thing. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I mean, I was having loads of visuals. Okay. But to be honest, I mean, I've had mushrooms experiences where I'll take say 2 grams and I trip hard.
Yeah.
I'm also taking the same 2 grams of the same batch of mushrooms and had it be a much different experience. And I really believe that the mushrooms, they know what we need at the time. They're so intelligent. They know what to need. And on that 6-gram journey, for me, it was very emotional. And so what came up was, I mean, as a result, yes, I was able to rewire my brain and move back to Costa Rica. But I got this very powerful message from somewhere that I needed to be of service. And my life was never going to be what I wanted it to be until I served my family and friends and community, and which led me to creating the Facebook group, and which led me to what I'm doing now, is figuring out how to help people, support people who are healing from chronic illness, with whatever all the tips and tricks I've used to heal myself, as well as my natural interests and abilities. So I don't know if it's any one thing that I can point or tell people, but Yeah, with the mushrooms, I mean, I, I don't know. It's because it is a balance. You don't want to be attached, saying like, I have this one journey has to heal me. It worked for Paul Stamets and it worked for this guy, and I've heard these stories, and so damn it, heal me, damn it, heal me. But it's like, okay, heal me. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. But I'm not going to be attached to it. It's kind of like, this is a good example and analogy. We have GPS systems on our phones and in our cars, and we trust those. I type in my destination, a very specific address. I don't just put in Iowa or London. I put in this town in Iowa, this address in London, and then I trust the technology to get me there. And so it's kind of that mix. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think obviously all the DNRS work that you've done before would have given you a platform and foundations of which to, I guess, I wonder if you'd just done the mushroom trip on its own without any of that pre-work, would it have been as powerful, and would you have needed to do a lot more after? I think it was probably a mix of the two, I imagine. Would you agree?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. 100%, man. Because if I had not done DNRS, and I wouldn't have realized it was a limbic system condition, and I wouldn't have known to use the affirmations in that directed way. When I heard the Paul Stamets stuttering story, it wouldn't have landed with me in that way, as like, I can mimic that. So yeah, it was all, looking back at my life, I can see every little thing I did, every objectively bad decision I make, every shitty job that I took that I ended up quitting and feeling like a loser because of. I learned something in that shitty job that I'm applying now. Like, the mistakes that I made that I would beat myself up for in the past, I realized I learned something, and it's all part of the puzzle, and it's all brought me to where I am now.
And it's out of interest. So when you talk about microdosing, like how much were you? Because I looked it up, like microdosing, and I was just like, I wonder, because someone first told me they were like it was like eighth of a gram, and it just felt like not a lot at all. So then I started doing. I think I was doing a quarter of a gram, but I think but I'm doing these in these little truffles that I got sent, so not actually like dry, raw or whatever it is. But how, when you do microdosing, like how micro is it?
Okay, yeah. So I recommend people start with 0.1 of a gram.
Okay.
Very small amount.
Yeah.
Now, I want to give a disclaimer. Mushrooms are going to be extremely safe and non-addictive and powerful for the majority of people. However, people who have a history of schizophrenia in the family, large doses of mushrooms especially, are not a good idea. They can cause a schizophrenic break. Right. For everybody else, as long as you pay attention to set and setting, and use that, which is a long established framework of how to take psychedelics in a medicinal way, where you do it at a time when your mindset is right and your environment is correct. It's very important. But unfortunately, for people with schizophrenia in their history, which are some of the people who need medicine the most, large doses of mushrooms aren't good. However, there is some new studies and some anecdotal evidence coming out that very small microdoses can be safe and effective for people with schizophrenia. So if anybody listening to this is in that boat, if you are thinking about using mushrooms or psychedelics at all, please, do your own research and find something that works for you. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a tool that can help you decide if mushrooms are right for you, if anything is right for you. And we'll get into that in a little while. But so yeah, I recommend starting with 0.1. When I microdose, I do 0.2. So I take it and then I usually forget about it. And what ends up happening, I have a ton of energy, and mentally I'm very clear. My body feels loose and limber, and I'll be sitting back at the end of the day going, oh my God, that was the best day. What did I do differently? Oh yeah, I microdosed. So I think really low doses are beneficial. Also, for what you were talking about with the truffles, so it's a bit of a misnomer. So in Europe, especially, a lot of times truffles are the root of the mushroom.
Sorry, I kind of misled you there. When I said truffles, it was like I've been sent them in like these, like what I'd say is like a cacao ball. So when I say not like an actual mushroom truffle, is that what you thought I meant?
Yeah, but also, I mean, so they're made with the fruiting bodies.
Okay.
Actual mushroom. Do you know the ones you get? Like they're made with this.
I don't. I mean, the amount I pay for them, they should be made with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sorry, I did interrupt. I just wanted to make sure.
No, okay.
But yeah, carry on.
Well, that's what I want to explain, because it is, there's the truffles, like the black truffles that you shave that grow under the ground, that kind of truffles. But then also people will call mushroom chocolates mushroom truffles. Yeah. And it's called the scalaria is the root of the mushroom. Okay. They do still contain psilocybin, but it's only like a fifth to a tenth of the amount of psilocybin as the fruiting bodies, as the mushroom itself. So it could, especially because, I'm in North America, where and you're in Europe, and in Netherlands, for example, mushroom truffles, the scalaria, the roots, are legal, but then you also have people making mushroom chocolates, etc. So I just want people to, for safety and dosing purposes, to realize that if you have the fruiting bodies, what looks like a mushroom, the stem and the cap, then 0.1 to 0.2 of a gram is a great place to microdose. If you have the scalaria, the root, then you're going to want to do some more research, do some experimentation. You might have to take a lot more of them to get the same effect.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So yeah, my final question before we get, before you share with us, we were talking about some techniques that I think people would love to hear about. So, you've been through like a whole roller coaster of a ride in terms of to get you where you're at today, and thankfully you're in a position today where I know you still have to realign every now and then, but at least you've got the tools, what you need to do, and if something goes wrong you can just realign and get back on track. And that must be so powerful from a mindset point of view. At the time where you were like at your lowest and you kind of couldn't see a way out, and I think you mentioned suicidal thoughts, there are going to be people listening to this right now who are going through those same emotions. What would be your advice to someone like who's in one of those moments right now, who's having a terrible day, having a terrible week, and they just can't see good times coming ever again? What would you say to them?
Yeah. First of all, I would say to them, I am so sorry that you're going through this. And I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you and it's not your fault. Again, you are just a human animal living in a body that is not adapted to the environment that you're in. And I'm so sorry for that. The next thing is to don't be afraid to ask for help. I know that a lot of people have an experience where their family and friends don't get it, and that's difficult. But I want to recognize you and thank you, Phil, for the work you're doing with this podcast. It's amazing. I've shared it with my group. I know it's given them a lot of hope. And sometimes that's all you need is just some hope to keep you going. So please just don't give up. You have a special gift inside of you to share with the world that only you can share. And if you give up, then you're not going to be able to share it, and the world will be a lesser place for it. And please, do it for Phil, do it for me, do it for your friends and family. But I also understand that is very easy to say from where I'm sitting. And I like to give people some practical things that they can do. So if you really are close to giving up, I'd encourage you to research the framework of the hero's journey as distilled by Joseph Campbell. Every superhero movie, The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, The Matrix, all of these epic stories, Beowulf, the Iliad, they are all use the same framework that is essentially the story of the human experience. And there's 12 steps in the hero's journey, but there's 3 main ones, and I like to stick to those with people because it's so much easier to understand. There is the departure. So think actually, I watched The Lord of the Rings last night. Think Frodo leaving the Shire. He's forced to leave this peaceful, beautiful existence in the Shire to go to fucking Mordor, and he's a hobbit, because if he doesn't, all of humanity is gonna perish. That's the departure. And we all have that in our story. Something, maybe it was when you first started experiencing chronic illness and all of a sudden you're cut off from this life you formerly knew. So that's part 1. Part 2 is the initiation. When any action movie montage where the hero is going through training, where Luke Skywalker is, learning to use the Force and failing and trying again and failing and trying again. Most people listening to this are in the initiation phase, and it is a shitty experience, man. It fucking sucks. Yep. But when you come out of that and you get to the third part of the hero's journey, which is the return, where you have gained these skills, you have faced your darkness, you have reconciled with your past, with your father, with your mother, with your traumas, and you are healed and you have these skills to share with your community. That's when you become a superhero. And that's why I brought my cape here today, Phil, because I really want people to get this mindset thing. This is so powerful. And the hero's journey is a great way to do that. I've reframed my entire story. I made a comic book. I have an origin story, kind of like Spider-Man, where I was reading in the barn when I was a little kid and the mold bit me and it tried to take me. But because it got me from when I was so young, I was able to actually adapt. And my superhero name is Fun Guy because the mushrooms helped me and all of that. So yeah, if everybody look at the hero's journey, if you're familiar with it already, look at it again. Find your story in there and see that this is the story of humanity, and start viewing yourself as a superhero, because you are either a superhero right now or you're a superhero in training, and just start viewing yourself that way, as the hero of your own story, as the hero in your own journey.
That was awesome. Second of all, anyone who's listening to this and they're not watching it, go and watch it on YouTube right now so you can see Prosper's cape. It's like no cape I've ever seen before. No, that's I love that, and a lot of us, including myself, are in the initiation part, and the initiation part is what makes us who we're going to be. And I always say to anyone messaging me going through a tough time, but they're saying that an episode helped them, and I always just say to them, look, I think an aim for you, a goal for you, has to be to come on and tell your story once you're better, or once you've achieved the goal, or and I would say to anyone listening to that right now, that would be your return moment, your comeback moment, as it were, as Ron comeback. But to come on and tell your story. So I want to hear from loads of people. And yeah, I love that, mate. I think that's really powerful. And I think that's something I would definitely draw upon myself when I have my tough times. Did you mention you had some other another?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So I want to give you guys a couple of practical exercises that you can do to help yourself along this journey. And the first one I got from Deepak Chopra, and it's kind of like muscle testing, and it's showing you how it's being able to let your heart guide you and choose the right path for you in your healing. Because we all want this magic pill. People hear, oh, Phil has healed himself. What exactly did you do? What supplements did you take? What remediator did you use? And it's going to be different from everybody, for everybody. So this technique helps you do that. And first, when you're starting out, you go to a quiet place, put your hand on your heart and say, heart, thank your heart first, kind of primes it. Thank you for everything it does. And then say, heart, show me a yes. For most people, it's a feeling of expansion, maybe of warmth. Your experience might be different, but really in the beginning phases, take the time for yourself to figure out what is a yes for your heart. Say, thank you. Okay, that's a yes. Heart, now show me a no. And for most people, it's going to be a feeling of contraction. But again, your experience might be different. And it's important you take time to see what that means for you. Now, once you know what your heart says, how it says yes and how it says no, then anytime you're unsure, should I see this doctor? Should I eat this food? Should I take mushrooms? Put your hand on your heart, thank your heart, and say, heart, what is the outcome if I have this for dinner? A lot of times you'll get like a yeah, baby. And it's like a strong yes. Or you'll get a no, baby. It's like a strong no. But a lot of times it's like, wait, what? Okay, I think that was a yes, but let me ask the opposite. So heart, what is the outcome if I don't see this doctor? What is the outcome if I don't have this for dinner? And just play with it. And once you get it, I'll use it to like, heart, what is the outcome if I walk my dog to the left versus walk my dog to the right? And it's a really powerful exercise. The other one I just wanted to share with people who might be experiencing that fight or flight reaction, that anxiety, this comes from the limbic system being overactive and overstimulated. You can again put your hand on your heart and just take 3 deep breaths. Just take those deep breaths. And ideally skin to skin, but over your heart, over your clothes is fine. And what's great about this, you can do this in public without people thinking you're too weird. And it's really gonna help you get out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. And finally, the last one is, this is a more powerful version of that. You find a place where you can lay down and put your feet up against the wall and get your feet up in the air. Some people might only be able to get them with their knees bent based on the conditions they're experiencing. Just do your best to be in a comfortable place with your legs as elevated as possible, and just breathe deeply. And what this does is, because your legs are up in the air, it's a very strong signal to your body that everything's okay. Because if my legs are sticking up in the air, I'm not running away from a tiger. So this is a great thing to do before bedtime to get yourself into the parasympathetic nervous system and sleep better. Or if you're able to, and you can go for 5-10 minutes, put your feet up against the wall, do some deep breathing. If you really have a lot of anxiety or something, I hope that helps you a lot.
Yeah, no, I've actually heard of that last one before, but I'm going to try that tonight. I've been sleeping badly the last couple of nights, but definitely the breath, something that's really cool. And yeah, listening to the listening to your heart thing, I never heard of that before, so that's really interesting. Look, man, thank you so much for coming on to tell your story. It's been amazing. Love the cape, love the hero story. I love that you've not let I guess a previous lifetime of battles like get the better of you, and you've come out fighting. And I think that's truly inspiring to anyone listening to. And I know you've got like a dedicated group of people that follow you on Facebook and get a lot from you. Hence why I was recommended to speak to you. If people wanted to, I know you do work with people one-on-one. And if people wanted to either reach out to you or join your group, could you just give us some detail on that?
Yeah, 100%. If you're on Facebook, check out the Limbic System Lounge.
Mhm.
It's the same name on all platforms. There's also a YouTube channel, the Limbic System Lounge, that has a lot of videos. It has those exercises that I just did in video form. And then also a website, thelimbicsystemlounge.com. And that is where it talks about my one-on-one coaching. And I also have videos. There's also places you can learn more about DNRS and Gupta. And there's also several other limbic system programs, as well as watch funny videos. And, I have links to YouTube of like funny animal and baby videos. So, the Limbic System Lounge on on Facebook, the interwebs, and YouTube. I'm not on Instagram yet. It's just, it's social media is, yeah.
I'm sure it'll happen one day. Cool. Well, look, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate your time and coming on. And I know, as I said, I know loads of people will get a lot from this. And yeah, I'm excited to get it out to everyone.
Thank you so much for having me, Phil, for all that you do. You're amazing, brother. Your comeback is here now.